The Maggid of Dubno was a famous and skilled storyteller, and he is considered responsible, at least in part, for the centrality of storytelling and the revival of this art that was at the core of the early Hasidic movement. One time, a disciple asked him how he managed to somehow find the perfect story for every situation. And of course, his response took the form of a story. Once, he began, I was passing through a town and came upon an old abandoned barn. On one side of the barn, there were a great number of targets. It must have been at least 100. And in the center of every single target was an arrow, a perfect bullseye, 100 targets, 100 bullseyes. I was astonished and impressed. I went immediately to the town square and asked the villagers to share with me who was the skilled marksman with such amazing ability. They pointed me to a boy sitting off to the side with a bow and a quiver next to him. I walked over to him. Young man, I inquired, how is it that a boy like you is so very skilled to have accomplished this incredible feat with your bow and arrow? It's easy, really, the boy replied. I shoot the arrows first, and then I paint the bullseye around them. That's the thing about a story, the Maggid would say. If you know what's true, and you know how to use a story, you can't miss. We too are master storytellers. Not only do we enjoy hearing stories based on both fact and fiction, but we construct stories for ourselves about practically everything that happens in our lives, big and small. Dr. Stephen Kreitz, a religious scholar and teacher of moral science, wrote, "The formal quality of experience through time is inherently narrative. We tell stories to ourselves about others, about the groups of which we are a part, about our experiences, and about ourselves. It's part of how we make sense of the world." The neuroeconomist Paul Zak studied how stories affect our brains, and he found that telling or experiencing a story with a beginning, middle, and end causes our brains to release cortisol and oxytocin, two chemicals necessary for our ability to connect with others, to feel empathy, and to create meaning. The stories we tell ourselves about our youth, our coming of age, our adulthood, our loves and our heartbreaks, our achievements and our failures, the stories we tell of who we are now and how we came to be that way, our interaction in our day-to-day lives, these have real power. The most important stories we tell are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Nothing just happens, says our mind, so we read back a story of how it came to be that way and what it must mean to ourselves or others. We have the uncanny ability to take an interaction or incident as small as the tip of an archer's arrow and paint a target of story and identity around it. And we are so good at doing this, so accomplished at this task, that we should consider carefully the stories of which we are a part and what they mean for us in our lives as individuals and as a community. Are they healthy? Are they helpful? Which stories do we consider ours, a part of our souls? This past spring, I caught up on the most recent season of the Israeli show Shtisel. This most recent season sees the main character, Akiva Shtisel, and other family members coping with upheaval and navigating loss and trying to find their way through a great deal of difficulty. Don't worry if you haven't seen it yet. I'm not giving away any major plot points here. In the final moments of the last episode of the season, Akiva is seated at the table with his father, Shulam, and his uncle as well. And his father quotes the renowned author I.B. Singer. "The dead don't go anywhere. They're all here. Each man is a cemetery, an actual cemetery in which lie all our grandmothers and grandfathers, The father and mother, the wife, the child, everyone is here all the time. And in that moment, we see these three men, each of whom have had to refashion themselves through turmoil, joined by loved ones, dead and living at the table, chatting and eating and creating that warmth and Hamish hubbub we might think of when family gets together and falls into their comfortable, loving patterns. When I first watched that episode, I found myself with tears running down my cheeks. While the phrase that we are each cemeteries might feel dark, perhaps even morbid, the truth that it contains is meaningful. We are not just our individual selves alone in space. Who we are is defined by those with whom we share our stories, those who are with us and our loved ones who have died, and those who came even before them as well. And when we are in need of a port in the storm, remembering that we are part of a story much bigger than ourselves can bring us strength and certainty. In the 1990s, psychologists Drs. Sarah and Marshall Duke explored myth and ritual in American families. They found that children who knew a lot about their families, and in particular their family histories, fared better. They had a stronger sense of control in their lives, higher self-esteem, and had a greater belief that their families functioned well. In their research, the single best predictor of a child's emotional health and happiness and how much they knew about their emotional health and happiness was how much they knew about their families and family histories. If a child had the sense they were part of a larger family that anchored them through difficulty, be that personal difficulty or events in the world. Every family, they found, has a unifying narrative, which can take one of three shapes. The first two narratives are the ascending narrative of upward mobility and achievement, and the descending narrative of a fall from grace or loss of comfort. The third narrative is the most bolstering. They called this the oscillating family narrative. We've had our ups and downs as a family. We built a successful business. Your grandmother was the heart of the community. Your mother achieved amazing academic success. But we also had setbacks. We had a house burned down. Your mother lost her job. But no matter what happened, we always stuck together as a family, and we got through it. Children and adults who are the most grounded tend to understand themselves as an intergenerational self, recognizing that we belong to a narrative much bigger than ourselves enables us to see the vicissitudes of our own lives, or beyond just ourselves, such as during the time of the pandemic, coincides as just one chapter in a much longer story of ups and downs and learning, can bolster us and give us certainty when everything else seems to flow through our fingers. When we do not know the shape of the path that stretches before us, we need our family stories to sustain us. Looking for strength, we can reach backward through time to the stories of our families that have passed down and remember that we do not stand alone. We are at every moment surrounded by those whose stories wove together into the fabric of our families and our lives. There is a story in the Talmud that speaks about Rabbi Gamliel, who was traveling in a boat when he saw that another ship had shattered in a storm, and he was grieved because he knew that Rabbi Akiva, the great and beloved scholar, was on that lost vessel. The ship in which Rabbi Gamliel traveled was not affected by the storm, and it came ashore. But when Gamliel arrived, he was surprised and overjoyed to find Akiva there, alive and well. He asked what happened, and Akiva replied that a plank from his boat floated his way, and he grabbed onto it. And with every wave that passed, he nodded his head, and eventually he came to shore. At times he was above the water, and at times he was under it, but he clung to the plank and eventually made it to land, alive. Sometimes we are able to ride the waves with our heads above the air, and other times we find ourselves underwater. We stretch out our hands, seeking a plank to cling to that will carry us to shore. One plank we can hold on to is those of our stories of our own families. I treasure the stories that have been shared with me from my own family, about my great-great-grandpa who held the esteemed position of the assistant to the Rabbi in the shtetl my maternal grandmother's family hailed from, about the horrific pogroms that spread through the region, of a Cossack who came into my family's house and slashed his sword through the closet where my great-great-grandfather was hiding, and he didn't utter a peep. Later, he emerged with slash marks on his forehead and blood on his shirt, but he survived. On the voyage to America, when there wasn't enough to eat for those in steerage, my beautiful great-great-aunt Bella played her mandolin and sang in her angelic voice for passengers in first class to earn extra food for the family. And so many more stories. I am lucky to have been given stories to be reminded that we've encountered difficulty in the past, difficult that's hard to even clearly imagine today, and we have survived and thrived and grown over time, and into a time which prior generations couldn't really imagine in their own day. And on this day, when we consider what we will write in this story of the new year, let us not forget the chapters of our family's stories that preceded our own. I imagine these as prequels to our own books of life. And if you do not yet know your family's stories, let this be your call to seek them out and learn them if you're able. For those without deep family connection or for whom family is a difficult and loaded word, it can be just as powerful to learn the stories of the families of our own choosing, our friends who have become like blood. And regardless of our backgrounds, we can all turn to the story of the greatest mishpacha, the Jewish people. We have seen danger and desolation, and we've seen flourishing and beauty and triumph. And through it all, we've maintained our identity, lived with purpose and meaning, and have striven always to make this world a better place, and we will come out stronger in the end. You are not just yourself, you are an intergenerational self. Part of a vast organism, a millennia-long Jewish history, generations-long family narrative that dwells within you and can support you through the months and years ahead. And if you are present here today, regardless of how recently you connected with this Temple Chai community, you now are part of the decades-long history of this special congregational community. And in this moment, I feel particularly blessed to be written into this temple story, to join as co-author of our congregational book of life at this time of turning and returning to each other. Since I began to connect with Temple Chai last fall, I have been learning the story of this Temple Chai community, how a small community of Jewish folks came together to pray and celebrate holidays and bring up their families. They created sacred space in various locations as the fledgling congregation grew, and then joined together to purchase a stable, making the barn into the modest temple that was the congregation's first sacred space. Energetic and dedicated clergy joined together with active and invested lay leaders to create a community that held care of each other at the center, who believed in meaningful education for all ages, from relevant and spiritual adult learning courses to immersive and fun retreats for children and families, from silly Purim spiels to acting out fully staged stories on Rosh Hashanah, from serving at the soup kitchen on Monday evenings to down-to-earth relationship building with an incredible system of chavurot in the early days of the congregation. They created a Hamish congregation that welcomes each person as they are, regardless of background, identity, ability, financial level, or prior experience. Each of these were seeds planted by the founders of this congregation, watered and given sunlight by each leader and volunteer that served the community, They sprouted and grew and blossomed year after year as generations have come through this holy community. Yet at times they have weathered drought and heavy winds. They have dealt with weeds and invasive species, and they have certainly dealt with very high temperatures. The story of this Temple Chai family is indeed what those researchers I mentioned earlier would call an oscillating family narrative. We have had many times of success and growth and joy. We have also encountered seasons of challenge and upheaval, including the most recent chapter just completed. Yet we have come out of each of these periods with fortitude and perseverance, returning to joy and comfort together. On these high holy days, as we imagine God holding open the book of life with blank pages there ready to inscribe each of our deeds, we here stand now as a community, having turned the page into a new chapter of our book of life, of our temple. An empty page, an open book, new possibilities await us. What lies before us? Who will we become as a community? What story will we write together? We will be selecting and creating a building, a new sacred space for our community, and it will be right-sized and beautiful and modern, and it will serve our needs in a sustainable way. The financial ship has been righted, and you have my absolute commitment, as well as that of our lay leaders and staff, to transparency and financial responsibility. In this, we will remain stalwart. But beyond this, over and above this, an empty page, an open book, and possibilities. Our Judaism will be relevant, innovative, and transformative. It will have depth, knowing that each person deserves a full-strength engagement with Jewish life, accessing the entirety of what our tradition offers us. As I glimpse our future, I see an everybody-friendly community that holds at its core folks with Jewish and non-Jewish backgrounds, scholars and new learners, veteran community members, and seekers. Our idea of what is sacred or religious will expand to include not only what we might initially think of, services, holidays, traditional learning, as religious, but also what we might previously have called cultural, from food to visual art, music to literature. We'll create a broad array of access points into doing Jewish and connecting with our community, acknowledging there are many meaningful paths to engagement, as many meaningful paths to engagement as there are entry seekers. In the Temple Chai story we are creating together, each person will be supported and empowered to chart their own Jewish course and determine what their most meaningful Jewish engagement will be. Through all of this, we will have fun together. We will have joy. In our future together, I see smiles on faces and I hear laughter. We will take our mission and our work seriously without taking ourselves too seriously. And the thread that will weave all of this together is relationships. The future of Temple Chai is grounded in deep, interconnected relationship as a dynamic, lived, intergenerational community of care. People and relationships will remain at the center of all that we do. Together, we'll strengthen the fabric of our community, knowing that community is built one relationship at a time. Each of us is a strand of thread with a different texture and color and sheen. And with each new connection, we weave ourselves together into an even stronger fabric. I'm therefore thrilled to announce our exciting new initiative, Chai Connect. As we thought of the most important and powerful initiatives we could create, we looked at the experience we've all been through during COVID. For more than 2 years, we've been disconnected, at times unable to be physically present together, more distant than ever. Now is the perfect time to find your people, to connect with folks from the same life phase or another one, to have folks with whom to share holidays or attend temple programs with, to have fun with, or learn with. And if you feel like you already have your people, this is a precious opportunity, as so many are seeking connection, to make even more friends and enable others to find their people too. In doing this, you will help strengthen and empower our temple community into the future as a community of deep interconnection and care. That is where Chai Connect comes in. Inspired by Temple Chai's strong history of Chavarot, our new Chai Connect circles will be peer-led social groups based on either a shared interest or life phase, helping each of us to connect more deeply and build friendships with one another. Chai Connect circles will be led by Temple Chai members for other Temple Chai members. You'll enjoy time together, bond over shared interests, and build relationships. We're kicking off the program with an initial 6 circles, and you can find information in your Temple Chai brochure. Just past the middle. The pages aren't numbered, but it's just past the middle. And these groups are only a starting point. So if you have an idea for a circle you want to see and help lead, we will support you in creating and leading that group. Our wonderful program director, Chi, is leading our Chai Connect program, and she is eager to help you join a circle or create your own circle for others to join. I was looking for Chi to wave her hand. Oh, she stepped out. Perfect timing. Okay. An empty page, an open book, a new chapter of relationship, connection, and meaning for us to write together. I am here because the story I learned showed me that Temple Chai has within it everything we need to chart our own beautiful future together. I'm with you now. I will partner with you in the future for each stroke of the pen as it glides upon the page, creating exquisite chapters to come together. The philosopher Alistair MacIntyre wrote, "I cannot ask the question, what am I to do, without asking the prior question of what story or stories am I a part?" As individuals, seeking out and telling our family stories can gird us and give us fortitude to face difficult seasons in our lives. And we can look to the collective history and memory of the Jewish people as well. The past is not just the past, it is also our present. So too in our congregational community. We've experienced joys and sorrows. We've struggled at times and succeeded grandly in others. But we have learned, and we are better for having been part of the journey, lifting us up from anxiety and turbulence like a plank to cling to in the vast sea are our stories, reminding us of our ability to walk through challenge and flourish again. Bachya ibn Pakuda, an 11th century Jewish scholar and philosopher, taught, "Days are like scrolls. Write on them only what you want remembered." We are our stories. They narrate our identity. They make us who we are. And the most powerful stories we tell are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Let us write a story together that we will be proud of for our children and our grandchildren to remember when they take up the pen and continue the story when our time